What seems like a joyous occasion, a visit from relatives, was anything but that this time. The mother-in-law didn't just arrive with luggage, she brought a meticulously crafted life plan for the entire family. As soon as she crossed the threshold, she handed her daughter-in-law a document stating, quote, 0. The young woman accepted this decree in silence, and no one could have foreseen the turn of events that day. Greetings. Dear listeners, it's a pleasure to welcome you to my channel. I have a captivating new story for you today. Enjoy. The revised account. Lyudmila had always considered herself a remarkably patient person. She could listen patiently as a colleague lamented about management for the third time in a single day. She could offer a polite smile to a shop assistant who had been rude to her. She could even overlook her husband, Igor, forgetting their wedding anniversary. However, it turns out that even patience has its limits, and this particular limit manifested as a printed list of demands. Lyudmila and Igor had exchanged vows 3 years prior. Their wedding had been modest, but their one-bedroom apartment was entirely their own. 28 square meters on the city's outskirts, purchased with a mortgage before Lyudmila even met Igor. Lyudmila worked as a manager at an insurance company, earning approximately 70,000 units of currency each month, with 35,000 going towards her mortgage. Igor was an engineer at a factory, his 50,000 units covering utilities, food, and car loan payments. They lived modestly but comfortably, relying on their own hard work. Lyudmila's mother-in-law, Iraida Makarovna, made infrequent appearances in their lives. She would visit from her town, 300 kilometers away, every 2 months, stay for a couple of days, and then depart. She always brought jars of homemade preserves, always criticized Lyudmila's housekeeping, and always sighed dramatically when looking at her son. Quote _1_. Meanwhile, Iraida Makarovna's own residence, a 3-bedroom Khrushchev-era building, remained empty. Iraida Makarovna lived alone after her husband's passing, knitting socks for sale and receiving a pension of 23,000 rubles. Everything changed in March. Igor came home from work looking grim and announced that his mother required surgery. Lyudmila, naturally, was worried. After all, the woman was over 60 and her health was a concern. It turned out to be nothing serious. Varicose veins, a scheduled procedure, but with a lengthy recovery period. Iraida Makarovna called her son, adopting a tone of utter desolation, lamenting that she had no one to lean on, that she was completely alone, and asking if she might stay with them for a couple of months. Quote 2. Igor echoed, glancing at Lyudmila with pleading eyes. Quote 3. Lyudmila surveyed their 28 square meters, the sofa that served as their bed, and the cramped kitchen where they could barely turn around together. Quote 4, she conceded. Quote 5. Iraida Makarovna arrived in April, accompanied by 3 suitcases, 2 bags, and a box that rattled with the sound of pots and pans. Quote 6, she announced cheerfully, stepping into the apartment. Quote 7, she grimaced. Quote 8. The mother-in-law's surgery went smoothly at the local hospital, and the doctors discharged her. 5 days later, her home turned out to be Lyudmila's apartment. Iraida Makarovna settled onto the sofa, declaring her need for rest and informing the young couple that they would have to sleep on the pull-out bed. Quote 10. Igor whispered, settling down next to his wife on the creaky mechanism. Quote 11. Lyudmila endured. She rose at 6 in the morning, prepared breakfast, and rushed to work, returning at 7 in the evening, only to freeze in the doorway, astonished. Her mother-in-law, who supposedly had difficulty walking, was standing at the stove, cooking borscht according to her own recipe. Iraida Makarovna commented without even turning around. Quote 13. A week passed, then another. The mother-in-law had settled in. She rearranged the furniture, discarded half of Lyudmila's cosmetics. Why do you need 5 creams? And began offering unsolicited advice. How to mop the floor. How to fold laundry. How to speak to your husband. You're too harsh, she'd say, peering at Lyudmila over her glasses. Quote 16. Igor merely nodded at these pronouncements, averting his gaze. Lyudmila remained silent, clenching her fists. By the end of May, it became apparent that the 2-month arrangement was merely a formality. Iraida Makarovna had no intention of leaving. She felt perfectly fine, went grocery shopping, met up with newfound friends in the city, and occupied the sofa in front of the television every evening. Quote 17. Igor cautiously inquired one day. His mother regarded him as if he had suggested she throw herself in front of a train. Quote 18. Igor deflated. Lyudmila watched this exchange, feeling a chill creep into her very core. She realized then, her mother-in-law was not leaving. Not at all. June was sweltering. Lyudmila would return from work utterly exhausted. All she desired was to collapse onto the sofa and remain motionless, but the sofa was occupied. Iraida Makarovna lay there, fanning herself with a newspaper, engrossed in a television drama. Quote 19, she'd say, without tearing her eyes from the screen. Lyudmila would trudge to the kitchen, brew tea, bring it to her, and then sit on a stool, as there were only 2 chairs, both piled high with her mother-in-law's belongings. Igor was working late. He took on overtime, citing financial necessity. Lyudmila suspected he simply dreaded returning home. She couldn't fault him. She, too, would avoid it if she could. Mid-June witnessed their first significant confrontation. Lyudmila came home from work to discover her favorite dress, the very one she wore to her wedding, submerged in a basin of water. "I washed it," Iraida Makarovna declared. "It was hanging in the closet, gathering dust. This dress shouldn't be machine-washed." Lyudmila felt her voice tremble. "It's made of delicate silk. I didn't machine-wash it. I hand-washed it. Why are you shouting?" The dress was irreparably ruined. The silk was stained, and the seams had come undone. Lyudmila stood over the basin, tears streaming down her face. Her mother-in-law observed her with a bewildered expression, as if unable to comprehend the source of the fuss. "Igorichka, tell her," she appealed to her son when he arrived. "I just wanted to help." Igor glanced at the damaged dress, then at his mother, then at his wife. "But Mom really did want to help," he mumbled. Lyudmila turned and retreated to the bathroom, locking herself inside. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, crying as quietly as she could. After that day, something within Lyudmila fractured. She no longer made an effort to be polite. Her responses to her mother-in-law became curt and cold. She ignored her requests. Iraida Makarovna sensed this and grew resentful. Her comments became venomous. "Igorichka married poorly," she confided to a friend over the phone, sitting mere meters from Lyudmila. "His wife is cold, can't cook, and the house is a mess." Lyudmila gritted her teeth and remained silent. She no longer cried. She was simply waiting, though for what, she herself didn't know. July began with temperatures exceeding 30 degrees Celsius. Their apartment, situated on the top floor, was stifling. There was no air conditioning, and the windows faced the sun. Lyudmila would wake up in a pool of sweat on the pull-out bed, head to work, return, and the cycle would repeat. Iraida Makarovna, conversely, seemed to thrive. She no longer complained of her leg. She moved about the apartment with vigor, cooking, cleaning, rearranging things. She behaved as if it were her own home. One day, Lyudmila returned to find her books, an entire shelf collected over years, packed into a box. Quote 28, her mother-in-law explained. Quote 29, quote 30. Lyudmila's voice rang out. "So what? You've already read them. This is my apartment." Iraida Makarovna straightened up, her eyes narrowing. "Yours," she repeated. "And my son doesn't live here? I am his mother. Therefore, it's mine too." Lyudmila opened her mouth and closed it, realizing the futility of arguing. She picked up the box of books and took them to a neighbor for safekeeping. That evening, she attempted to speak with Igor, but he merely waved his hand wearily. "Lyudka, just bear with it a little longer." "How much longer?" "A little longer. A month, a year, 10 years. Don't yell. I'm not yelling. I'm trying to make you understand. Your mother has taken over our apartment. She's a sick person. She's as healthy as an ox. She's out shopping, cooking, visiting people. Igor looked at her as if she had suggested throwing his mother out the window. She's my mother and my daughter. Lyudmila understood that she had lost. She lay down on the pull-out bed, turned to the wall, and did not speak to her husband again until morning. The morning of July 20th began as usual. Lyudmila got up, dressed, drank her coffee standing in the kitchen as her mother-in-law had claimed the only chair, and prepared to leave. Ida Makarovna looked at her thoughtfully. "Lyudochka, wait," she suddenly said. Lyudmila turned. Her mother-in-law extended 2 sheets of paper, densely printed. "Here, I've made a list," Iraida Makarovna announced. "I was thinking, since I'm living here now, we need to establish some order, and Igorichka needs a proper wife, so I've outlined for you how to live." Lyudmila took the papers and read the first few lines. Wake up at 5:30, breakfast for Igor at 7, porridge and fried eggs are mandatory, attire, no trousers, only skirts below the knee, hairstyle, hair gathered in a bun, loose hair is a sign of looseness, lunch, first course, second course, and compote absolutely, dinner. The list continued for 2 pages in small print. What to cook, when to clean, how to speak to your husband, how to greet him from work, even what to watch on television. Lyudmila looked up at her mother-in-law, who sat with a pleased expression, clearly expecting gratitude. "Are you serious?" Lyudmila asked quietly. "Of course I'm serious. I wish you well. Igorichka is accustomed to order, and you're indulging in your whims. Yesterday you didn't even prepare dinner, saying to order delivery. How can you not love your family? I was at work until 9 at night, and at your age I worked 2 jobs and managed everything." Lyudmila carefully folded the papers, then folded them again and tucked them into her pocket. "Thank you," she said. "I'll take it into consideration." Iraida Makarovna beamed. Lyudmila left for work, got on the bus, rode to the office, sat at her computer, turned it on but did not work. She simply sat and stared at the screen. "I have to do something," she thought. And in that instant, everything became clear, absolutely clear. That evening, Lyudmila returned home at 6, uncharacteristically early. Iraida Makarovna was watching a television drama, sprawled on the sofa and nibbling cookies from Lyudmila's hidden stash. "Quote 47, she blurted out without turning her head. "Quote 48. Lyudmila walked into the tiny hallway, opened the closet, and pulled out her mother-in-law's 3 suitcases, one after another. "What are you doing?" Iraida Makarovna's voice turned wary. Lyudmila did not respond. Methodically, she began packing the suitcases with belongings: her robe, slippers, dresses, blouses, everything that belonged to her mother-in-law. Iraida Makarovna leaped from the sofa. Lyudmila said. Lyudmila straightened, meeting her mother-in-law's gaze. "This apartment is mine, solely mine. It was bought with my money, registered in my name, and I pay the mortgage. Your son is merely registered here, and you are a guest who has overstayed her welcome by 3 months. Now, pack." Iraida Makarovna's face flushed crimson. "Are you healthy? I have nowhere to go. You have a 3-bedroom apartment in your town. I'll call Igorichka. He'll teach you a lesson. Call him. What is happening?" "Mom is crying, saying, 'You're throwing her out.'" Lyudmila was just closing the last suitcase. She straightened up and looked at her husband. "Your mother has forgotten that she is not living in her own home." "How can you? She's my mother. This is my apartment. We were husband and wife, but you chose. You chose every day for 3 months, and each time you chose not me. What are you talking about? About the fact that you never once stood up for me? Never. When she ruined my dress, you defended her. When she threw out my books, you stayed silent. When she was rude to me, you pretended not to notice. And today, she handed me a list of demands. Underscore, quote underscore 63 underscore mom. Is this serious? Quote 64 Igorichka. I was only trying to help. I wanted her to be a proper wife. Quote 65. Mom. It says here what time she should get up and what to wear. Quote 66. And what to watch on television. Well, what else? She watches all sorts of nonsense. Lyudka, let's talk calmly, he began. Mom was just upset. I don't want to talk. Your things are in the hallway. You can pick up the rest tomorrow. Mine, yours. You'll be leaving with Mom. But this is my apartment. No, this is my apartment. You are merely registered. You can check the documents. Igor looked at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. Lyudmila hoisted the suitcases. Where are you going? I'm taking the things out. It's up to you. You'll leave today or stay with someone, but I won't let you into the apartment anymore. She stepped out onto the landing. She didn't have the strength to drag the suitcases to the elevator, so she left them by the neighbor's door. She returned, retrieved another bag, carried it out, and then the box of pots and pans. Iraida Makarovna stood in the doorway and read aloud. Lyudochka, what are you doing? Igorichka, tell her, this is wrong. I am a mother. I am an old person. Lyudmila walked past her one last time, carried out Igor's backpack and a bag with his belongings, and placed them beside the others. That's it. You're free to go. You'll regret this. My son will find a proper woman. I wish you luck. We'll talk tomorrow. She took a shower, a long, hot one, then lay down on the sofa, her sofa. She stretched out on it like a starfish, turned on a movie she had wanted to watch for 2 months, ordered pizza, and fell asleep. Lyudmila slept until morning, and for the first time in a long time, she had pleasant dreams. Igor arrived the following afternoon and rang the doorbell. Lyudmila let him in but left the door ajar. He entered and looked around. Her pillow and blanket lay on the sofa. The pull-out bed was nowhere in sight. Did you leave my mother on the landing? He said quietly. She didn't want to go home. She sat on the bench by the entrance until evening. I found her around 10 o'clock. I took her to my place. And what? How? And so what, Lyudmila? She's my mother. I didn't ask her to sit on a bench. She has a home. She doesn't have money for a ticket. I don't either. The mortgage, remember. Igor looked at his wife. Lyudmila saw bewilderment in his eyes. He genuinely didn't understand what had happened. Listen, he finally said. I understand Mom overdid it with that list, but she's old-fashioned. She thinks that's the right way. Let's just, let her stay a little longer, and you ignore her advice. A little longer. How long? Well, a month, too. And then we'll see. Lyudmila sighed. Igor, your mother will never leave. Do you understand that? No, how can she leave? She's settled in here. She likes having you nearby. Who else is there to boss around? She's not going anywhere. We'll make her. Quote. 4. Igor, in 3 months you never said a single harsh word to her. Not one. You just nodded and asked me to be patient. But she's your mother, and I was your wife. Lyudka, leave and take your things. Igor stood for another minute, then turned and left. Lyudmila closed the door behind him, locked it, and sat on the sofa. Only now did she feel how utterly exhausted she was, as if she hadn't slept for 3 months. Iraida Makarovna called her for a week, every day. At first she cried into the phone, then she swore, then she threatened, then she cried again. Lyudmila listened, remained silent, and hung up. Igor tried to return, visiting, waiting outside her window, calling, sending messages. Let's start over. I'll take Mom home, I promise. Lyudmila didn't believe him. One time, she agreed to meet him at a cafe. Did you really take her? She asked. Yes. Igor nodded. She's home now, and how is she? Offended, says you kicked her out onto the street. I really did kick her out. Well, you could have been gentler. Underscore, quote underscore 90 underscore. It's all clear. Goodbye, Igor. Wait, I spoke with her. You pitied her and will always pity her because she's your mother and you don't know how to refuse her. She left. They never saw each other again. The divorce was finalized quickly through the court. There was no property to divide. Igor moved out permanently. Lyudmila was left alone in her 28 square meters. It was November, and dusk fell early. Lyudmila hurried home from work when someone called out to her near the entrance. "Lyudochka." She turned. Ida Makarovna, looking aged with vacant eyes. She stood with a small bag in her hand and a guilty smile. "Can I talk to you?" Lyudmila stopped. "Speak." "You see, Igorichka married a girl, a good one, a proper one. I moved in with them, helping with housework, but she, you know," Ireda Makarovna faltered. "She kicked me out, said she didn't need a mother-in-law, so I thought, perhaps you... Well, could you let me stay for a week? I have no money for a ticket, and Igorichka didn't give me any." Lyudmila looked at her, recalling that list, the ruined dress, the discarded books, 3 months on the pull-out bed. "No," she said quietly, "Lyudochka, but I—" Lyudmila entered the building, ascended to her floor, opened the apartment door, closed it behind her, sat on the sofa, and suddenly let out a quiet, almost inaudible laugh. Down below, by the entrance, Ireda Makarovna stood with her bag in hand, gazing at the illuminated windows. She waited. But the windows went out one by one, and it became clear. There was nothing more to wait for.